A great greeting to all our spectators. My name is Ihor Havryshchak. This is the traditional YouTube platform of Channel 24, and it is with great pleasure that I introduce our regular guest. This is Ramiz Yunus, a political scientist from the United States of America, former chief of staff of the Azerbaijani government. Mr. Yunus, hello. Greetings, thank you for the invitation. I am glad to see you in good health. I greet all our esteemed audience. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to the heroes. This is a live broadcast, so I really want to ask our viewers, regular and new, do not be stingy, like, subscribe, ask questions in the online chat. We read everything, monitor everything, and will bring constructiveness to our conversations. Mr. Yunus, there is a lot to talk about, because Antony Blinken and David Lammy were in Kyiv, talked a lot, promised a lot. We will see what they promise. Well, first of all, of course, I would like to start with them and ask how to take Antony Blinken's words that he flew to Kyiv to find out what Zelensky's and Ukraine's plans are in winning this war, what kind of victory it should be, where the Ukrainian armed forces wants to hit the territory of the Russian Federation, and how in general you can explain the visit of Blinken and David Lammy, the British Foreign Secretary, before Zelensky's visit to the White House. You know, from the experience of my life, along big politics, I have already learned to somehow read between the lines and understand diplomats not only in protocol, not only how they say, why they came, when they arrived, with whom they came, and here is the form of speech, these figures of speech. And most importantly, what kind of information support there is. Because everything that we see in big politics today is not news, it has always been so, this is the law of this genre. For example, a geopolitical metamorphosis is now taking place that has shaken the entire planet. There are so many different centers with different interests involved, and we need to watch for information from the countries and centers they represent, such as Antony Blinken and the UK Secretary of State. Therefore, it is very important to pay attention to how this topic is covered in the UK and the United States of America, as well as how for several weeks, a month and a half, the situation around the issue of allowing or banning the use of long-range missiles on Russian territory has been growing. This applies not only to speculation and conversations, but also to the official level of information at which the problem is raised so that it is officially voiced. That is, I remember the whole dynamics of this war for 2.5 years, starting right from the very first HIMARS, if you do so, and now we have reached, for example, the F-16. You will remember how it all developed, and how you were also involved. When this topic was first raised, everyone expected how many HIMARS there would be and what it would look like in the future. There were other issues, such as Abrams and so on, as well as Patriots and other nomenclature expressions. Therefore, when they threw in like this at first, and then they first processed the information field of Ukraine, the information field of Russia in a special way. The response had to be seen. After that, it went to the information field in parallel, of course, with the countries of the collective West, again, depending on the political situation that was there. And given that in America elections are held every 2 years, that is, every 2 years Congress is elected, meaning the entire lower house and 30% of the upper house, as well as presidential elections are held every 4 years. Therefore, America plunges into the election campaign every 2 years. And if it plunges into the election campaign, there is a tough confrontation. The parties will always use some aspects of the domestic political and foreign policy kitchen. And given that your war has been going on for 2.5 years and has shocked America, this topic will always be speculative. Depending on how it is beneficial to various political forces, it will rise and fall. However, given that the Democrats are now in power, they regularly deal with this topic. And the same Antony Blinken, who today, so to speak, is at the forefront of this topic, that is, he still heads the foreign ministry, and you see, the speculative nature of these two topics, the Middle East and Ukraine, is as it was, it remains. The Middle East appeared after October 7th, after the terrorist attack that Hamas staged. And since then, this topic has existed. And moreover, lately, on the contrary, it was in first place, because Antony Blinken did not get out of the Middle East at all. And now, notice, today this is how the information support went that Antony Blinken is going to go to you. And suddenly he does not come there alone, but comes with the Minister of Defense. Not with the Foreign Secretary, but with the British Minister of Defense. Therefore, it can be concluded that the emphasis on this topic is likely to be transferred more to the UK as a performer. First of all, I mean the same storm shadow, because after all, the two of them came once, which means, as you understand, the Anglo-Saxons. And this support has been clearly discussed on this topic over the past few weeks. And it has already come to the point that we have already reached Biden himself, and Biden has already voiced it himself, that is, at the moment we are already studying it. And all this is in parallel with the debates that took place here, the build-up of information support on how the debates between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump will go. And all this has risen together, and the presidential elections of the United States of America are a common thread. All this is directly related to the presidential choices of the United States. And from the point of view of making the most of the actions of the current administration, whether in the Middle East, or in the Russian-Ukrainian direction, I mean from the point of view of foreign policy. And internally, of course, it was a debate. And if you're interested, we will return to those debates separately. And therefore, summing up, I can say that the topic of allowing long-range missiles to hit the territory of Russia has already officially reached the level that it will be announced today or tomorrow. There is just a technical question: where is it and when will it be announced? Most likely, this should be announced during a personal meeting between Joe Biden and President Zelenskyy, who is also preparing on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly. It should take place this month. But, most likely, for a start, in order to polish all the nuances, a meeting should also take place on Friday, as far as I heard, between the leaders of the United States and Great Britain. That is, it is Antony Blinken who will have to report the results of the visit to Joe Biden, and the Secretary of Defense will report to the British Prime Minister. After that, at this level, and after that, of course, it should be adopted at the level of political leaders. Well, of course, this must be done with the participation of President Zelenskyy, so that he also receives certain political dividends, because this is all the work of him and his team in this situation. Therefore, this is how I assess it. I have regularly told you that there is no ban on this topic. We just need a political conjuncture, and this political conjuncture is not from the point of view of Ukrainian interests and not from the point of view of how Ukraine needs it, but from the point of view of the presidential campaign in the United States, unfortunately. But better late than never, and this decision will make itself felt in the very near future. And it is not by chance that I would like to ask you to pay attention to the fact that just a few minutes ago I watched the speech of the President of Russia, on a Russian channel, where he, so to speak, threatened in his usual manner, of course, that is, to every such action. I remember during these 2.5 years of war, there were exactly similar statements about HIMARS, about the Abrams, about the ATACMS, about Storm Shadow, about F-16, about everything. Here are the same phrases one-to-one. That is, NATO is involved, this is involved, we will take our measures directly, we will take this, we have been regularly said, but nothing has happened, that is, I mean, the nuclear doctrine of Russia, it exists, no one has cancelled anything. And this is not only because Western countries supply you with all types of weapons. There, the doctrine also applies to the territory of Russia, which is constitutionally assigned to them. Here, they can attribute this to Crimea and Donbass. They can additionally attribute this to the Zaporizhzhia and Kherson regions, which they allegedly appropriated. But let's be more serious. The Kursk region is actually an internationally recognized territory of Russia, and not a single person in the world has even stuttered about it or expressed doubts. However, based on this, we see a rather strange reaction of Russia itself to the attitude towards its own doctrine. We also conclude that Russia is not interested in this escalation. Russia today is in a situation of zhongquang in terms of the resource base and methods of waging war, and today, of course, in this situation. If you compare it with Ukraine, of course, the fact that the war is taking place on your territory, and you manage to turn the tide a little by transporting the war to the territory of Russia directly to the Kursk region, but in any case, Russia still has huge opportunities to bomb your territory. But if we look at the future, even in the short term, this type of decisions, this type of Western capabilities, which will ultimately affect the battlefield in the substantive plane, do not bode well for Russia. Therefore, it can once again limit itself to only such statements, because they have no other resources in their arsenal, except for nuclear weapons. Understand? And the topic of nuclear weapons is not only a topic of Russia, it is a topic not only of the United States of America, Great Britain and France. This is, first of all, the topic of those countries on whose protection, on whose loyalty, on whose support in various political, informational, military, technical and economic spheres, including the economy, the same Russia counts. And this is, first of all, the same China and the same India. Therefore, not being able to brandish this baton as much as at the beginning of the war and as it has been all these years in relations with the West, today, as I understand it, this topic has sunk to a level that does not cause concern for anyone in the West. It does not cause concern, as far as I understand, among the Ukrainians themselves, especially after Ukraine has experienced several Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Therefore, especially in the current situation, when Ukraine is already conducting military operations directly on the territory of Russia, when everyone is waiting for the official announcement of the decision that the West gives permission for the bombing, and these will be direct deliveries, and when the election campaign has entered the home stretch, and Kamala Harris held the debate so successfully, all this once again confirms that the Democrats have every opportunity in order to accumulate a large positive loan in these 2 months and retain power in the White House. By the way, if we talk, Mr. Yunus, about strikes and the lifting of the ban on strikes deep into the Russian Federation, then the Times reports the following: allegedly at a meeting with Zelenskyy, Biden will give the go-ahead for the use of Storm Shadow, but the ATACMS will not allow it, fearing escalation, especially on the eve of the elections. And if we recall your answer, what Putin said, he tried to be very original, because he reacted to the possible lifting of the ban on strikes against Russia. He did not say that the West would be directly involved in the war there, because the HIMARS had already hit the Kursk region. He said the West would be drawn into the war because Ukraine allegedly could not find targets on its own without Western intelligence. He would probably like to say that you will beat, this is a war and you are participants in the war, but we have already beaten, so the red line has been crossed. The Kremlin is trying to be original, because, by the way, yesterday Peskov said, why do you expect a response to some strikes by the armed forces of Ukraine every time? The special military operation is the answer. Well, Peskov avoided answering. Well, this, in principle, is the answer to this question. First of all, the fact that the Times magazine says this is on the surface. You see, I haven't even read what you're saying now. This is on the surface, because I told you, Antony Blinken and the Secretary of Defense came. Since the Minister of Defense comes, then, as I understand it, this is a military issue, long-range weapons. If Austin and the British Defense Secretary had come, then they would have said that it would be a joint decision. And since the Minister of Defense comes, as I understand it, the Americans will provide political cover for this topic, and, most likely, this will happen. I think so. In general, all this so far looks public as if it will be directly on the subject plane, and we will hear about it in the near future. As for Russia's reaction, I have already deciphered it for you. Russia is simply proceeding from the situation of Zhongquang. She must somehow react to the words of the press secretary of the President of Russia, unnecessary confirmation, because to suck out 10 fingers the same phrase to say about the HIMARS, about the Abrams, about the F-16 or about these long-range ATACMS missiles. The same thing. That is, we will respond adequately. And what does it mean to react adequately? Well, they show it anyway. And he honestly said that the special military operation is bombing peaceful cities of Ukraine and infrastructure from morning to evening. Yes, they bomb and, of course, certain military facilities. That's what war is for. But we see how many they are bombing civilian infrastructure. And what it costs the Ukrainian population. And this is their answer. They did it yesterday, they do it today, they will do it tomorrow. But, as far as I understand, each time it will be more and more difficult for them to do this. Moreover, when this begins directly, the response will come not only to the Kursk region, but also to other border territories. And I think it won't make them feel good. And I think the current administration is doing everything to stay in power. This is beneficial today for the same Ukraine in terms of the fact that Ukraine can strengthen its position due to this, prepare for 2025 in order to ensure that even then we can really talk about negotiations, which everyone wants except Ukraine. That is, Ukraine will only then go to these negotiations. By the way, President Zelenskyy also spoke at a press conference the other day and said that he had not given such permission to anyone. That is, on behalf of Ukraine, he did not give such permission to anyone. Only he himself can speak on behalf of Ukraine. Therefore, all this talk about negotiations, they are simply speculative. Only then this topic will be relevant when President Zelenskyy himself voices it. And President Zelenskyy has so far issued a decree on this topic. And in order to cancel his decree, he must cancel it himself, voice it himself. And I think he will voice it only when he has a stronger position and not at the level at which he is today. And as I understand it, the Kursk operation and everything that we will see in the next few months are just links in this direction. Mr. Yunus, I promised that we would read the chat, and this is exactly what fits into the next question. Kamala Harris versus Trump debate. Trump's answers to a twice-asked question about whether he sees a victory for Ukraine. He said twice that he wanted peace in this war. How do you assess this and, in general, how do you assess these debates? And the question, by the way, from our viewer, is personally addressed to you. Is it possible to replace Trump with Nikki Haley, or is it already final? No, this is no longer possible, because all this is decided at the Congress. The Congress was held. The Congress was the last deadline when this could be done. Therefore, it was a big political mistake of Donald Trump personally and his inner circle and the Republican Party as a whole, which could cost them defeat. That is, it is quite realistic, because Nikki Haley was a very strong candidate for the post of vice president. She could be an excellent candidate for the presidency if, for example, she was the candidate on the other side. And here, if Kamala Harris were a candidate, then Nikki Haley would definitely have the advantage, because Nikki Haley was neither vice president nor president. That is, it does not have a negative background, so to speak. And Kamala Harris has a certain negative background, because she was vice president for almost 4 years. And this was the only main argument that Donald Trump and his political technologies used during the conversation. The fact that you're promising such beautiful things now, why didn't you do it while you were vice president? This is an argument, but it is a weak argument, because it can be said in the same way, remember the cadence of Donald Trump and remember who his vice president was. Not everyone will remember the name of the vice president of certain presidents, you know, except for specialists, right? I'm supposed to know this from my work, but if you ask any journalist now, 90% won't even know it. Or ask what Michael Pence did during the time of Donald Trump. We remembered Michael Pence only after the events of January 6th, when, according to the Constitution, he had to react somehow. He did not react. And he had a conflict with Donald Trump, and everyone heard today that Donald Trump had such a vice president. And with the authoritarianism and domineering that Donald Trump exercised, everyone understood that the vice president was just a figurehead. It also depends on the personality of the president and on the personality of the vice president. For example, Dick Cheney and Rumsfeld were charismatic people whose interests and views were always taken into account by the presidents they worked with. But not everyone was so charismatic. Therefore, the same Kamala Harris in Biden's entourage, and more tactful. Tactics have always been the Democratic Party, and therefore they did not stick out, especially given that Joe Biden is not such a strong president, and plus in age, and if she came to the forefront, you see, now it came out in a few months, and everyone forgot about Biden's existence today. Notice, right, and if this had happened from the very beginning of his cadence, she would have come very strong, having accumulated political capital there in order to run for president. Yes, and now she would look much more confident, more venerable. But this would also hit the prestige of the same Joe Biden and the authority of the US president as a whole, both within the country and around the world. Therefore, it was quite understandable why the vice president was not so manifested today. Nikki Haley, this topic has already remained in history. The calculation on Nikki Haley is based only on the fact that she was persuaded that, most likely, if Donald Trump wins, she can become Secretary of State or National Security Assistant. Well, in order to then, in the future, after Donald Trump, run for president in the next election. Yes, this is just a political technology option, a working option. But to do this, you first need to win the elections. But to what extent, let's talk. I will just summarize my opinion on these debates, because we have all been waiting for these debates. The whole of America has been waiting, the whole world has been waiting. And not because they, so to speak, are waiting for all the debates. This was the first time that such high expectations had taken place, because before that there had been a debate as a result of which the incumbent president was forced to withdraw his candidacy. And so it brought additional intrigue, intensity of passion, and it was so hyped in the media, both inside the country and abroad. And then it came to the climax of the 10th, and on the 10th we saw who of them had prepared how. Clearly, this debate ended in Donald Trump's defeat. But not at the level at which it happened between Trump and Biden, because there was a pure knockout, and as a result of this, Biden withdrew. But here it was a clear victory, with a big advantage in points, because it was clear that Donald Trump was not prepared. He came unprepared. As I understand it, he is not a team player, but everyone sees that he is not a team player, that he is not a systematic player. He is, so to speak, a hostage of his ego, a hostage of his charisma. Charisma is good for a politician, for any person in life. But everything is good in moderation, that is, it should not cross the boundaries. Therefore, you need to listen to the professionals who gather around you, who want you to win, who give you certain advice. Notice, he came as if he was there nearby, for him what Joe Biden is, for him like Kamala Harris. He said the same things, and the same words, the same cliches that he said during the debate with Joe Biden. Well, then you won it, because there was a person in front of you who is a few years older than you, who is already over 80, and here is a person 20 years younger than you. This is absolutely not the right person. Moreover, she told him so. You are not running with Joe Biden, you are running with me. She said it publicly, and it was visible. That is, you do not repeat everything that you said then, you say what is about me. And he just followed the program that he considered from his point of view, it was winning. And so it turned out to be a loser. Moreover, he was asked a question about one thing. But he always said everything he thought was necessary. That is, he got on his horse on this migration topic, saying that the economy in this case is the same thing. Any question about whatever you want, about Ukraine, about the Middle East, about China, about all internal problems, the same thing. I spoke these arguments, and sometimes it came to stupid things like how to eat cats and dogs. And that's why it became such a major meme of this debate. That is, it was clear that he, Although at the beginning he held on for a few minutes, then for sure, Kamala Harris managed to drown out her excitement at the very beginning. Because if for Donald Trump this was the 8th debate, then for him it was the first such debate. But then her experience as a prosecutor manifested itself, so to speak. It was obvious, because prosecutors, they always prepare for some kind of criminal case, they prepare, rehearse, they even rehearse their speech, how they will speak. And judging by the information that everyone already knows today how it was prepared, they closed for a week and built the same stage. On the other podium there was a man who looked like Trump, dressed like that, and he spoke with the same voice, with the same questions, with the same manners, in different versions. Can you imagine, every single day? And she rehearsed, practiced these answers. And in the end, it was polished. That is, as they say, improv is good when he is well prepared. And it was clear that, unlike him, she is a team player, she is a system player. She listens to her advisors. And she didn't come out, she didn't, she lost her temper, she didn't become a hostage to her emotions. And notice, she always looked attentively, smiling directly at him. And he never looked at her. He looked directly at the presenters. It was obvious that he had a grimace, a grin, and veins on his face. He became a hostage of his emotions, especially at the moment when she said a phrase, probably prepared on her part, about the fact that people were leaving her rally. And then he got wound up, and then he became a hostage of his emotions. His most Achilles heel is emotions. As soon as it starts, you can already hit it in the gut on the right and left. Well, this happened. And then this topic, when the hosts asked him a question about her skin color, well, how could he not prepare for this? You knew that this topic was being discussed in the media. Your team should have prepared you that there would be such a question, and you should have a clear, ironclad such a good answer. Well, this question, moreover, the host asked him, and he said how you answer then. Well, what does he say? He said, you're a former president, you should be responsible for what you read in the newspapers. He said, I read in a newspaper that it said that, so I read it. And then I read in another newspaper that it said something completely different. Of course, I said, so what, I don't really care. That is, how is it? Well, how can you say that, if some newspaper writes a lot of things? Well, you are the president of the country, you are a person who has worked with information all your life, information must be double-checked before you publicly voice it. You can use a lot of things in the campaign rhetoric, but not such things as about her race. And he made the same mistake at one time with the birth of the same Obama. And again, this is a Russian topic, so to speak, and it is painfully perceived here in America. You work for a certain electorate, there is a certain percentage of African Americans, and you voice it. I voiced it in the days of Barack Obama, you voice it now, well, what will you get out of it? Will any person vote for you after that? Well, the one who will see you is a racist, right? This is wrong. As for the fact that cats are eaten, well, again, yes, it was someone somewhere who blurted out something, somewhere someone said something. But this is not at the same level, right? And therefore it was immediately clear that the journalists were unequivocally on the side of Kamala Harris, their personal sympathy. But again, what did they do, these journalists? He also blurted out about cats and dogs. They took it and said that there was no such data. So they wanted to catch you. If she had blurted out something beyond the edge, for sure, if she hadn't been caught, then it would have been bad for them. But they did not run over her much, because she followed the script that was written by her team. It was clear that she would work out the script and the direction that they had. And therefore, in general, she withstood it. Kamala Harris's team was better prepared for this than Donald Trump's. And as I understand it, Donald Trump's team cannot cope with him, because he kicked out half of this team before the debate. He kicked out many of them, and before the convention he also kicked some out, that is, those who insisted that he take Nikki Haley. After the Congress, he again joked with some. And when he was asked about Dick Cheney, I have never seen such a thing that in America in such an election the former vice president of the Republican Party or another party supports an opponent. Dick Cheney is together with his daughter, and his daughter, a congressman, moreover, a former congressman. By the way, she is also gay, that is, of course, she supported it. And after that, you saw how competently the Democrats promoted the topic of Taylor Swift. The same thing, it's not just like that, it's also preparation. Notice what phrase was written, childless Catwoman. This is a phrase by J.D. Vance. He said that only a childless Catwoman would definitely vote for Kamala Harris. And here is a childless Catwoman with almost 300 million subscribers, imagine, all over the world, and the bulk in the United States of America. And this is just the beginning. She is likely to take some part in the election campaign of the same Kamala Harris. Therefore, it is clear that Donald Trump, with his independence, does not listen to his command. He does not have such a united, powerful, monolithic team that could use the mistakes that the current administration, Joe Biden, definitely has in huge numbers, when Biden was vice president, and Barack Obama was with them. And claims can be made to the same Kamala Harris, specifically, personally, and not like this. It is unfounded that her father is a Marxist, she is a communist, she will do this, she will do that. You can't do it like that, so everything he said was unfounded. Yes, they both allowed a lot of things, it was propaganda in a big light. But if we are talking about which of them learned, who lost? All those who voted for him ironclad remained for Trump. They don't care how these debates would go, they will still vote for him. They don't care what verdict the judge will make in some court regarding certain criminal cases against him. This is his core electorate. Just like the Democrats have a nuclear electorate. But we are now talking about undecided states. First of all, about Pennsylvania, where these elections were held. And given that Kamala Harris, whom everyone was waiting for, had to speak for the first time without assistance and a prompter. Everyone said that she did not give interviews for more than a month, so she could not talk. Then she went to an interview with her vice president, which means that she is not confident in herself and she needs this assistant. And then she went one-on-one, because, as I understand it, she decided not to waste her energy. It was clear that her team's tactics were not to waste energy, not to speak in person, so as not to make a mistake, not to become the subject of speculation, creating intrigue. And on the other hand, to relax your opponent. Trump was 100% sure that he would smash it. He will smear it in the same way he smeared Biden. Because he thought, since she is silent, since she does not speak anywhere. And everyone says in all the media that she cannot speak at all, she cannot defend herself. But it turned out to be completely different. And why did it turn out? Because it was necessary to study how she worked as the Attorney General of the largest state in America. She sent people to death. Do you understand what it is? To the death penalty. It's not just like that. She worked with such criminal cases. It was necessary to see what decisions she made. And if a person worked in such a position, a big one, it was the largest state in America. And after that, she came to big politics, became a senator, and now vice president. This woman has character. And if she needs to prepare, she will sit down and get ready. And sir, you see, we didn't hear her for 2 months, we didn't hear her for 4 years, how she used prompters at performances, and here she was without prompters, but she prepared. And mind you, right after these elections and debates, instantly, because everybody was wondering if there would be a second debate or not, her entire team that was there immediately came up with a demand for a second debate, a continuation, so to speak. They saw that if there was a continuation, it would gain even more political capital. And now the difficult situation with Donald Trump. Because his teams, if they go to the next debate, get such a blow again, it will generally be worse. And if you don't go, let's say, you are scared, then you need to choose between 2 evils less. And which one is smaller? Now the Republicans and Donald Trump personally have a difficult situation. To summarize, I can say that at the moment Kamala Harris has managed to get ahead. It will be possible to see how it will be distributed in these undecided states within a week, because now they will begin to conduct certain public opinion polls. Despite the fact that they are biased, the Republicans will conduct theirs, the Democrats will conduct theirs. But I remind you that when there was a Biden-Trump debate, then, well, clearly they could not lie. Then it was clear that Trump smeared Biden, right? And that's why journalists, even in the hanging, they talked about it. And it's the same now. I haven't heard a single solid, so to speak, experts, even those who gravitate towards the Republican Party, whom at least one of them said that Kamala Harris lost. No one said this unequivocally, right? Another thing is that they did not increase the number of her victories and there were gaps. Well, everyone understood that she did not lose, I will say the minimum, yes, so. But the fact that Trump did not win, everyone saw it with the naked eye, because he made a lot of mistakes. How it will be next, let's wait to see if there will be debates or not. This will be a very important criterion. And as I understand it, now all attention will be focused on these vice presidents, who are supposed to speak in the same way on October 1st. And if J.D. Vance loses to Walz in the same way, then the Democrats definitely have more and more chances to win the election campaign every time. But today, after these debates, the advantage at the moment can already be said. Without a poll in public opinion, this is how I will say my opinion, purely subjective. Kamala Harris definitely won in these debates and thereby she pulled ahead a little. How it will be next, we will see for the next 2 months. Thank you, Mr. Yunus. I would like to recall Volodymyr Zelenskyy's interview with the Brazilian edition of Metropolis, where he recalled the Brazilian-Chinese initiative or, as they say, an alternative peace agreement. Well, we must be honest, Volodymyr Zelenskyy smashed this agreement, this proposal. He said that the Sino-Brazilian initiative to end the war is destructive. Why? Because he claims that with Ukraine, first of all, no one said anything, the Chinese and Brazilians came up with something, offered it to Russia, Russia officially agreed, and now they are proposing some kind of peace agreement. Volodymyr Zelenskyy has repeatedly said that there is only a plan for Ukraine, and if there are any other proposals, please discuss this with Ukraine. Well, what game are Brazil and China playing? Well, notice, from the side of the West, you do not see any Brazil, no China. I mean figuratively, if we take some initiative of some country on the part of the West. None of them have been, because they are definitely forced today, even many of them, not even liking, so to speak, this war, because it disrupted the plans of many in the West and in the United States of America as well. But they are forced to reckon with the interests of Ukraine and President Zelenskyy personally, supporting the plan proposed by President Zelenskyy, because they are in the same bundle. As for the Brazilian-Chinese initiative, this is unequivocal, because they are not in the camp of the West. They are in this territory, but they are not as tied to Russia as the West is tied to Ukraine, since the West is directly involved in this topic with its arms supplies. That is, on the one hand, the President of Russia is partly right when he says that the West is directly involved, but it is taking part in what? Support for Ukraine with both financial and military technical supplies. Yes, and definitely to advisors, no one is hiding this either. But the West is not fighting directly on the ground. And on the part of the countries, so to speak, we will take BRICS, because Brazil, India, China. India is not so active in this matter, but neither is India. Narendra Modi, as you can see, also goes to Moscow, then to you, then to America, then to Europe. Therefore, it is clear that he will also take part in this type of initiatives, but from this side. But, again, it will not do it as actively as Brazil and China do. They put forward all this, but they do it just as much as it is beneficial for them to maintain good normal relations with Russia, so that Russia, well, because Russia is counting on them. Russia, except for them, counts on no one. Because all those that Russia counted on in the Western world, they quietly went into the shadows, and first of all, these are the countries of the Normandy Four, that is, the Normandy format, I apologize. Well, although there were fours, that's right, that is, they were in the four, yes, Ukraine, Russia, Germany and France. But, as you can see, Germany and France have gone into the shadows, they are no longer talking about this topic. And I remind you that the last time the three of them went to Moscow, yes, Draghi was there, and the German Chancellor, Draghi, the former Prime Ministers of Italy, the German Chancellor and the President of France. But we don't hear them anymore. And notice, even we do not hear them. And notice how the Italian newspaper Republic throws information into the information field that Scholz allegedly said this time. And Scholz could not say such stupid things categorically, because if Scholz said this, President Zelenskyy responded sharply to him. And this is just a newspaper canard to show that such an initiative exists from key countries. Rather, I have no doubt that this canard came from the very centers that push Russian narratives. It could be. They may be in the West, but in general they work specifically for Russian narratives, just like this Brazilian-Chinese initiative. But all these topics have a ceiling, because they are unrealistic, and they cannot be implemented in any way. I wouldn't even answer them. President Zelenskyy, from my point of view, could have looked stronger if he had ignored him, for example. Don't talk about this topic at all. Because if Brazil and China are talking about this topic, well, let them talk about it. And what's next? Where can they implement it further? They will never come to Kyiv about it and will not say it. They will say this somewhere in order to please the same Russia. Well, for God's sake, they have certain relations with Russia from morning to evening. But this will never be said on a serious level. Because if they say this at a serious level and next to the President of Ukraine, then the President of Ukraine will respond to them in full, knowing, moreover, his character. Therefore, the topic of negotiations is speculative for the most part for those centers that are more or less tied to Russia today, both political and economic, which skim the cream of this war, using the weakening of Russia. And the first thing you see is the BRICS countries. So in this, so to speak, political formation, which is neither the European Union, nor NATO, nor anything else. Today, you see how much confusion and vacillation there is, how differently everyone works there, everyone has different interests there, and there are motley countries that do not like each other, by and large. The main two countries are India and China, you know their relations, and they are the basis of the BRICS in this regard. Therefore, when we understand this, we see what different interests these countries have, and if one of them voices a topic, including possible peace talks, then yes, it can be pleasant for the Russian side and unpleasant for the Ukrainian side, but this topic is far from reality and serious discussion. In any case, until the end of this year, even I do not see a 1% possibility of these negotiations. This is possible only after the end of the presidential campaign in the United States and, more importantly, depending on how events develop on the battlefield and how everything that is happening today will end, so to speak, in the Kursk direction, and how this war, which has now entered an active phase, will develop. That is, today, as I understand it, the intensity of passions on the battlefield is, well, much higher than in all the months of this war, because the war has reached a decisive stage. And here, look, all the political battles in the United States of America, in Europe, and the interests of all these countries clashed. And some want to end this war, others do not know how to end this war, and understand that today everything depends on the Ukrainian soldier, on the will of the Ukrainian people and on the will of Ukrainian political leaders led by their president. And the stronger and so Ukraine stands, the more you will be reckoned with. Keep in mind that only those who can defend themselves are taken into account. This is an Azerbaijani proverb. By the way, Mr. Yunus, it is already a tradition, yes, we regularly recall the situation in the South Caucasus, and this directly affects, of course, Ukraine. From the last thing that is relevant, Armenia offered Azerbaijan to sign peace agreements. Pashinyan allegedly says that there are 16 or 17 points. I want to deal with you so much, because I do not really understand, and allegedly I understood that there are some agreements on 16 points. You can tell us in detail how serious it is, how much it is a step before the signing of peace agreements. In this regard, I have just spoken about the position of Ukraine and how it works with the outside world. It is very important to note the visit of the President of Azerbaijan to Italy. Recently, the President of Azerbaijan made a fairly powerful historical visit to Italy. For information, you have appointed a new foreign minister. He is a very strong minister. Dimitro Kuleba is a very good minister. He was a good minister in wartime. He is a successful minister. He worked out his cadence with a plus sign. This is unequivocal. Just like you had a chic commander-in-chief Valery Zaluzhin. He also did a great job. And he remained in the cage of the political nomenclature of Ukraine. I have no doubt that Dmytro Kuleba will also stay. They will. Note that Syrsky is coming. And you're already talking about Syrsky at the same level as about Zaluzhny. I think you will talk about the new foreign minister in the same way as you do about Dmytro Kuleba. Goals and objectives change. Just think first about who the current new minister is, and where he came from. He was the ambassador to Turkey. He is the very person who did everything to improve the relationship between Turkey and Ukraine, and first of all, the relationship between the President of Turkey and President Zelenskyy in personal terms, including thanks to your new minister. And there is another important nuance here. As a person who has worked in both the legislative and executive structures of power, that is, in the cabinet of ministers and in the Supreme Soviet, in the Parliament of Azerbaijan, I remember the confrontation between the cabinet of ministers and the presidential administration, when the two apparatuses duplicated each other, the Department of Culture here, the Department of Culture there. There is dubbing, bureaucracy, a struggle of character, ambitions, for power, etc., and closeness to the body. Above all is the president, and therefore the president presides over the entire country, administrations, foreign policy, and security issues. Therefore, this dubbing is underway. And when the current foreign minister was appointed to the administration, and when he worked there, after that he worked as a first deputy minister for a short time. This is understandable precisely in order to eliminate some inconsistencies in the operational plan between the presidential office and the foreign ministry, and, possibly, the same government, or this foreign economic direction. This is very important to understand for people who are in big politics. It was I who was in charge of the apparatus, so I understand how very important it is for the apparatchiks, yes, because different apparatchiks, they must. It should be one line, and this line is led by the president. You see, the main person in the country is the president, both for the military and for officials working in diplomacy or inside the country. This must be clearly understood. When this is understood and there are no divisions and groups, especially during such a full-scale war, it is very important. Sorry for the nuance. I wanted to show how Azerbaijan today uses contradictions in foreign policy. I said this to note that it is good that you have a new minister who brings new, fresh blood. I really hope so, especially in the direction of Turkey and the region for the security of Ukraine. You know the relationship between France and Italy, the personal relationship between Emmanuel Macron and Giorgia Meloni. You know how much they do not like each other. You know, the relations between France and Azerbaijan have reached the level of the plinth today. It has already come to the point that the French government tells its citizens not to visit Azerbaijan. That is, it has reached the level of principles. By the way, relations with France have never been like this. They have become such only under Emmanuel Macron. This is the most unsuccessful president in all the years of modern history of France, as far as we can judge. And as a result, when did it start? After Azerbaijan restored its sovereignty and territorial integrity. This is the topic where they have been looking for fish in troubled waters for 30 years. Russia, France and the United States of America. But now we have managed to do it, right? And note how Azerbaijan is now playing on this countermove. You have a bad relationship, and you have a bad relationship with us. And we have the best relations in the European Union with Italy, with your main competitor. Today, so that you know, Azerbaijan has the largest trade turnover in the country. Italy is in first place. Azerbaijan's trade turnover with Italy is 16 billion. With Russia, Azerbaijan has only 4 billion. 4 times less. And today look at how the president of Azerbaijan was received in Italy, what messages were there and what conversations there were. And how Italy supports and will continue to support Azerbaijan at all levels in all structures of the European Union. Although Italy is a democratic country, and elections and everything else are held there, they have their own internal political battles. But this suggests that Azerbaijan is playing on the opposite side. These are the moments he takes into account. He works on the territory of the European Union, studying this. He works in the United States of America, works in Russia, works in Iran, works in the East, Central Asia and China. That is, in all directions. And as a result of a successful foreign policy, note that today we are at a crossroads, and we have East and West, and we have North and South. And we have only the lack of a peace treaty as a stumbling block. And in Italy, The president of Azerbaijan made several messages. By the way, he was asked questions about a possible gas contract when Russia and Ukraine stopped supplying Russian gas through the territory of Ukraine in December. And they just asked the question, what will it look like? They say that Azerbaijan is involved in the negotiations. That's what he said in plain text there. I have answered many questions. It should also be interesting for you, Ukrainians. This is a personal request. This is a personal request of the leadership of the European Union and the leadership of Ukraine. Because if the supply of Russian gas stops, and no gas is supplied there, neither Russian nor any other, Azerbaijani, Turkmen, Iranian, then the gas distribution station will simply cease to exist. And for Ukraine, this is a very important structure, so it was Ukraine that went for it. From the point of view of morality, it is wrong to let the gas of the country that attacked you pass through your territory. That is, they earn money, and you earn money. And this is necessary first of all for the same Europe. 60% of this gas went to Austria, and I am not saying that both Slovakia and the Czech Republic were also involved in this matter. But they asked you. You could have refused, but you could not refuse. You were told that you had to do it. You agreed to this, and now the contract expires in December. And what to do now in December? The president of Azerbaijan says that we were asked. It is not profitable for us. Both materially and economically, we, Azerbaijan, do not need this, because all of Azerbaijan's gas has already been charted for several years in advance, and Azerbaijan is already supplying gas to 10 countries. We had 8. Here are 2 more countries added. These are Slovakia and Croatia. They have been added. Azerbaijan has recently signed a contract with them, and the process has already begun. That is, I am saying that Azerbaijan does not have so much gas as such, but if this is not done, then the gas distribution station of Ukraine will be covered with a copper basin. And in December of this year, after gas stops flowing from Russia, 4 EU countries, Austria, the Czech Republic, Slovakia and Hungary, will instantly find themselves in very difficult economic situations. I'm not even talking about the fact that they will have a huge budget deficit. And this was publicly said in Italy at a press conference. You should hear all this. And when there are these anti-Azerbaijani speculations, people should ask questions, including in Ukraine, why they are doing this, who is throwing it away, who wants to drive this wedge. This is one topic that was very important for me to cover in this situation, so that it is clear where the legs grow from, because this topic was still present in your work. Now I return to the topic of your question, which you said about these 17 points. Of these 17 points, 13 points seem to have been agreed, which is 80% of the contract. But there are key issues there, and key issues of international practice, so that you know how they work. If one item does not work, then the entire document does not work. Moreover, if this is the key issue, and there, these 4 points, these are the key questions. And one of them, this key one, is the amendment of the Constitution of Armenia. Because the Constitution of Armenia clearly states that the preamble says that Karabakh is the territory of Armenia. Karabakh, this name, as they say, the NKR, does not exist anywhere at all. In reality it does not exist. Even the Armenian population no longer lives on the territory of Karabakh. And all those who were engaged in this, separatism, are sitting in the basement of an Azerbaijani prison. Understand? Well, a few people jumped off, but the bulk of them are in this prison today. And it is being prepared. It has already been submitted to the court, not today, but tomorrow the universal process will begin, so the whole world will see it. That is, what am I talking about? Despite this, they have a constitution. And if they have a constitution, what kind of peace treaty? Here, dear Igor, a peace treaty has been signed, and tomorrow some MP or someone appeals to the Constitutional Court of Armenia, and the Constitutional Court of Armenia declares that this agreement is not constitutional. And what are we going to do next? Why should Azerbaijan sign 13 points without agreeing on the main documents? If it were possible to sign some paper, such as a declaration of intent, or how we are going to move in this direction, where it would be clearly spelled out that, for example, when Ireland was in conflict with Britain, with London, then it was clearly indicated to change the constitution within a month. And they changed it within a month. If something like this is done, then, of course, there is an opportunity to sign some kind of framework document, which will be like a roadmap, and only then, after that, work on this topic. But it must be spelled out legally, it must be written in this paper. Because they say that we will change the constitution in 2027. If you change the constitution in 2027, then a peace treaty can be signed in 2027. There are no other options here. I am not even talking about the fact that this is a very important issue. Dear Ukrainians, when I keep talking about the double standards of the West, I am sorry that you felt this on your own skin in 2008 with the Georgians, in 2014 with the annexation of Crimea and the massacres in Donbass, and now you see these double standards for all to hear. And now look, double standards in relation to Azerbaijan for 30 years. I told you this about the First Karabakh War, and the 907th Amendment regarding Azerbaijan, which was adopted by Congress, and called us an aggressor of Armenia. And they supported them 30 years ago. Now the First Karabakh War is over. This is history. I have already spoken about this topic 1,000 times. I do not want to repeat it. The Second Karabakh War began. We have defeated international law. Everyone agreed that we would do all this. We didn't do anything wrong. By the way, the president of Azerbaijan, at this conference in Italy, said so. Yes, we are doing it. It was the first time he had said it. He said it for the first time. He is the president of the country. One thing says Ramiz Yunus, an independent person, an expert. We are doing what Ukraine is doing. Crimea is Ukrainian Karabakh. You have Donbass, and the Donetsk People's Republic, and you have several of these Karabakhs. You do it. The whole West applauds you. The whole West supports you. Azerbaijan is doing the same. Why don't you support Azerbaijan? This is international law, right? These are double standards. Look, at the same time, what they are doing. It was as if the war had already happened. We have already liberated the territory. We have done everything. What do they do? Look, you know, there is such an organization, USAID. Samantha Power. You all know her, don't you? She also came to you there. This is Samantha Power. Its organization decided a few days ago to increase aid to Armenia from 120 million to 250 million through the prism that it would be signed off on April 5th. Blinken borrowed together with the Prime Minister of Armenia what they signed in Europe. And through this prism, 250 million. After that, we saw as soon as the Russian border guards left the airport. A few days later, American planes with American soldiers arrived there. Exercises are underway, and these American soldiers are stationed today in Zangezur, in the Sionic region, where the Zangezur corridor is planned. They did not go anywhere, they stayed there. Not so much, but these are American specialists, American advisors and American weapons. It did not come in large quantities. France is supplying the same weapons from this side, in concert, together with the Americans. A simple question, if you want peace with Azerbaijan, what are you doing? Doesn't Azerbaijan see this? So, if you send something there for $100, Azerbaijan should buy weapons for $1,000. What will this lead to? Moreover, this is happening on the border with Azerbaijan. You say that you want to squeeze Russia out of this region. So how do you plan to squeeze it out? How? Look at geography. There is Turkey here, Azerbaijan is here. You will not go against Turkey and Azerbaijan, will you? Or you will make a deal with the same Iran, which is allegedly considered your adversary. And when Azerbaijan sees all this, I no longer talked about the fact that Samantha Power received $1 million in the award. So that you know, there is such an organization called Aurora, which is headed by Ruben Vardanian, a notorious person who is now in a Baku prison. He gave her $1 million as a prize. She received the prize as Aurora laureate and is a member of the executive committee of this organization. Therefore, today it makes anti-Azerbaijani statements at all levels, in the State Department, in Congress, in Europe, and in Armenia. She is also an official American official. And it turns out, therefore, that this structure works for the Armenian lobby. That is, 30 years ago, when Azerbaijan had a pro-democratic government, and not the current government, which can be called the LIU, then El-Chebai was president. Then you adopt Amendment 907 against Azerbaijan. You do not call Armenia an aggressor. 30 years pass, the situation changes, 25 again, right? And in Armenia, a pro-Russian government, in Armenia, a pro-Russian Western government does not play any role for you. That is, Armenians can. But Azerbaijan is not. Azerbaijan cannot be touched. The territory of Azerbaijan or not the territory of Azerbaijan is not allowed. That is, the same attitude towards Ukraine now. Does this mean that Ukrainians can do this, but Azerbaijan cannot? And how should Azerbaijani society, the Azerbaijani people, not to mention the Azerbaijani government, behave in this situation? You understand that in the end, the same Armenia will come under attack, as Georgia once did, as you, Ukrainians, got in your time. Because in this situation, neither the Americans nor the French will be able to do anything without Azerbaijan and Turkey. Do you think Pashinyan does not understand this? He is just doing this political split, as I said. One foot sits in the direction of Russia and Iran, Azerbaijan, and the other in the direction of Brussels, Washington. Such a political espagade will cost him political hemorrhoids. He understands this. Now he is going to go to the BRICS meeting in October. Do you know? He goes there, Azerbaijan, because it applied. And he also wants to go there as an observer. Because he understands perfectly well that without Russia he will not be able to resolve this issue here. Because if he goes into a clash with the same Russia, there will be hands and feet left of him. And America and France will not fit in for him. They did not fit in for Georgia, they did not fit in for Ukraine. Ukraine has fit in for itself. Does Armenia have this opportunity? We saw how Armenia behaved during the Second Karabakh War. Therefore, when we see all this, we must understand the entire prehistory that unfolded here. I just mean that if today the Americans hope that it will be possible to put pressure on Azerbaijan, because they are in a hurry, there are 2 months left until the end of the election campaign, they need at least some paper, and then we will see how the situation develops. They need at least a document of intent, which can be presented as a step towards a future peace treaty. Yes, it is possible to move forward, but it is necessary to agree on the text so that it suits Azerbaijan, because Azerbaijan will never agree to any deal if it is not acceptable to it. Both the United States and the European Union do not have such strong levers of influence on the earth, on the same Azerbaijan, but the European Union and the United States, especially the United States of America, can lose in this situation, because public opinion will strengthen. Look at the same anti-Americanism that has intensified in Turkey today. It goes there in waves. It intensifies, then decreases, then intensifies, then decreases. And why does this happen? Because this is the wrong policy of the United States towards Turkey. In Republican times, this does not happen, relations are better there. And this is how it happens with the Democrats. Because, you know, here you need to take into account that Turkey has its own interests, and Azerbaijan has its own. And if you ignore the interests of Azerbaijan, Turkey, Georgia and other countries in the region, and use Armenia, then these same countries, like the United States of America, France, Russia and Iran, will also neglect the interests of Armenia itself. And Armenia has these levers of opportunity to resist that Azerbaijan has today. Azerbaijan did not have these 30 years ago, but today Azerbaijan has these levers of opportunity to resist. And look, we are hiding behind the same European Union and the same Italy. I didn't just do this, you see how I spent it, so that you understand. Will Italy want France to run into Azerbaijan? Italy will not want to. Italy has shown this by receiving the president of Azerbaijan so worthily. Italy will not want the 16 billion trade turnover, both the Azerbaijani gas that goes to Italy and the Italian business operating in Azerbaijan, to be threatened. I will tell you more. If in the near future you hear that the French company Total is winding down its business in Azerbaijan, you can be sure that the Italian oil company will take their place, and it will work no less successfully. Who will benefit from this? Italians and Azerbaijanis are definitely not the French taxpayer. Therefore, the West should think about this. I am saying this so that you understand, dear Ukrainians, you yourself have become a springboard today. Because this controlled conflict, which has always existed for the West, whether it is the Ukrainian conflict, whether it is Abkhazia, whether it is Skinval, whether it is Transnistria, whether it is Karabakh, it has always been like a tool for them, in order to work with Russia in this situation. And they did. Therefore, they always drove this problem inside. Azerbaijan is the only country that has managed to get out from under this, but we have been going to this for a long time. And here, for example, this case with the gas distribution station in Sudra is a personal confirmation of this. Note that today they are going to Azerbaijan themselves, because they need it, you know. You also need this in terms of the fact that the gas distribution station will simply suffer from this, but if they had worked correctly with Ukraine, this topic would have been closed long ago. They did 1 Nord Stream and 2 Nord Stream. They had no plans to return Crimea and Donbass to you, and to accept Georgians into NATO and the European Union. Exactly, they threw it like a bone. Your place in NATO, your place in the European Union. So they have been Turkey since 2005, or more precisely, it was since the days of the Soviet Union. Turkey stands at the gates of the common market, and now the European Union does not accept them. And they have been in NATO since 1952. And why don't they accept it? Because it is not profitable for either the Germans or the French. And Turkey does not understand this, and therefore today it seeks BRICS. Not to join it, but to show the West its position. Think about why you are doing this. Because Turkey is definitely a pro-Western country, our NATO member. Turkey's economy is connected with the European Union, the West and the United States of America. This is unequivocal. Turkey's big business and its establishment are well aware of this. Turkey has its own problems within the country, and the West does not provide assistance in these matters. As for national security, the issues with the Kurds in Syria and Iraq, on the contrary, only exacerbate Turkey's problems. Allies, on the other hand, you don't. Here are double standards for Turkey, double standards for Azerbaijan. And why? On what grounds? Because they are Muslims. Or what? Explain, right, and when we see this, we understand that we need to draw some conclusions ourselves. Over these 30 years of independence, Azerbaijan has drawn conclusions very competently, primarily in foreign policy. Therefore, dear Ukrainians, what is changing in your country? For example, the military political leadership, the inherent problems are being eliminated. I remembered that you had some outbursts of emotions in the Ukrainian information field. Well, what happened? Has anything changed? You are already in the Kursk region, and you have Commander-in-Chief Zelenskyy, not hostages. Has nothing changed? Trust your leadership, your people, your politicians, because you have a war going on, and you don't change forces at the crossing. Here we are in the same way. We gathered our forces into a single fist and developed a competent foreign policy. Azerbaijan's foreign policy is very filigree. If, as a result of this filigree policy, note that countries that do not like us, such as Russia and Iran, open the north-south. Iran does not like us, gritting its teeth opens this corridor. Armenians are told that the Zangezur corridor is not opening because they want the Aras corridor to pass through their territory from this side, as they are trying to benefit from this middle corridor. They don't care about Armenia, but in any case, Azerbaijan will win under all options. Azerbaijan will benefit from this, as it is already working through Georgia and Turkey. Look at Azerbaijan's relations with Georgia and Turkey and how Georgia, especially Ajara and Batumi, has changed. This is all thanks to these strategic partnerships with Azerbaijan, with Turkey. It's just that Armenia could also be involved in this. Unfortunately, it is a hostage of its wrong foreign policy. It was pro-Russian-centric, and in Russia it was Armenian-centric. Thank God, in Russia, before the rooster pecked in one place, they realized that today the importance of the South Caucasus is increasing, and Armenian centricity is working to the detriment of Russia. And look, the president of Russia did not come to Azerbaijan because of a good life. And Azerbaijan got everything it needed. Azerbaijan has internal affairs here. Do not interfere with us. You can help. Help. We need the Zangezur corridor. It must be opened. That's it. You can help with this. Put pressure. The Americans and Europeans want to open the Zangezur corridor, but they want to do it without Russia's participation. Russia, on the contrary, seeks to participate in this process. Armenia now does not know what to do. Both want it, but no one wants to marry it, but just use it to the fullest. The reason is that Armenia today is not a subject of international politics. Understand, an ordinary object, an ordinary tool. And today this is the situation in Armenia. And how can Azerbaijan sign a peace treaty with them in such a situation? Azerbaijan will not sign a peace treaty. Azerbaijan wants this peace treaty, but it must be fixed by them for centuries. Another thing is that we can sign some kind of framework agreement, where it will be clearly spelled out as a roadmap, step by step. And I really hope that America will begin to understand this, including not only people like Samantha Power. Because when we see what Samantha Power and those who stand behind her are doing, this is still the American establishment. They also represent the United States, and in Azerbaijani society do you want to ensure that tomorrow anti-Americanism increases, as in Turkey? Do you need it? Is Iran alone not enough for you? You see what kind of relations Azerbaijan has with Israel, what kind of relations with the European Union. Azerbaijan today brings you more benefits both economically and geographically than Armenia, which is at an impasse. If Russia thought of this, if Iran finished it, then you can't understand. It's a pity that there are very few people like Ursula von der Leyen. Ursula von der Leyen is a very smart woman. She showed herself well on the Ukrainian front. She concluded a strategic partnership with Azerbaijan here last year. There are just very strong anti-Azerbaijani sentiments in France and among those pro-Armenian forces, in the European Parliament, in certain European structures and here, in the United States of America. But they are especially strong in the Democratic Party here in California. But all of them, in any case, believe that the situation is simply missed. It's time. Unfortunately, this peace treaty could have been concluded long ago, and they have brought the situation to the point that is now there, in Syunik, Zangezur. Powder keg, and there is someone to blow it up. And Russia can do it. And Iran can do it. Iran has already opened a consulate general there. Russia now wants to open a consulate general there. What is it all of a sudden? Think about it. What is it all of a sudden in one part? Russia wants to open a consulate general there. Iran has opened a consulate general there. The Americans sent their advisors there. Russian troops are there. Well, it can explode in one part. Azerbaijan does not need this. Azerbaijan definitely does not need it. And Turkey does not need this. Does someone want to do it? Therefore, the situation is very explosive, very serious. But, as far as I understand, Azerbaijan is keeping the situation on the ground under control. Far from accidental. Therefore, the border of Azerbaijan has remained closed for the past 4 years, from the beginning of the pandemic to the present day. And I believe that this is a very correct decision, because we have a threat from all sides. And until your war ends here, until the situation here is resolved, we must continue this same foreign policy, and to you, dear Ukrainians, I am telling you this in detail so that you understand that do not be Ukrainian-centric and do not look at this world only through the prism of your interests. Notice how foreign policy is so motley. I welcome the change of your new foreign minister. I hope that Dmytro Kuleba will remain in the cage, and this new foreign minister, since he is being quoted, it means that they understand the importance of the Turkish direction, the direction of the UK. Maybe this will eventually lead to the security system that Boris Johnson spoke of. Because, as I understand it, Sibiya is quite a very strong diplomat and enjoys great authority, both within Ukraine and in the international arena, and especially in Turkey. So take care of yourself. Goodbye and glory to Ukraine. Glory to the heroes. Mr. Yunus, thank you very much for this conversation. More than ever, we talked for a long time. More than an hour and 10 minutes. I really hope that our viewers were satisfied with the answers to all the questions, because we discussed almost everything. There are still some questions, but we will return to them next time. Thank you very much. Dear Ihor, thank you. You are one of the few straightforward journalists keeping this issue in focus, helping Ukraine stay aware of its allies. I hope you see me as a friend and that I've earned this trust. Since the war began, I've been with you and hope to stay until your victory. I just want you to understand, when I defend my native Azerbaijan, I protect you in the same way, because this is a common problem. And there is no need to reinvent the wheel in foreign policy. This is very important. Diplomacy is important. Do not become hostage to information stuffing. You know, trust your government once you have elected it. Horses are not changed at the crossing. You know, there is an information war going on. You know who your friend is, you know who your enemy is. And take an example from your closest neighbors, how they acted in a similar situation, and how they are disliked, why, and in relation to the war as standard. But they see, move. And when your friends come out and sincerely tell you about it, sometimes even emotionally, just listen to them carefully, and don't say that this is not interesting to you, that it is far away and what it has to do with Ukraine. This is directly related to Ukraine, both literally and figuratively, because it is your geography. And the threats come from one center, because everything that is happening on Ukrainian soil began in the Lubyanka. And it began in our country in the Lubyanka, and in Transnistria, this is the Lubyanka, and in Abkhazia, and in the Skinvali region, also from there. Because it was all the empire, the Russian Empire, the Soviet Union. Unfortunately, Russia did not take advantage of the collapse of the Soviet Union and has now revived the worst traditions of the Soviet Union, you see. And as a result, today again there is blood all over the perimeter. Well, thank God that my native Azerbaijan got out of this situation. Again, we are not America, we are not China. We understand what kind of environment we are in, right? That is why we are striving to secure our borders and our domestic political situation as much as possible, and we also want to have the right and reliable friends and allies who will support us. And as you can see, we have Turkey, we have nuclear Pakistan, and we have Israel, right? That is, at least we have protected ourselves from this geography for the time being. But it's just that emissaries from Europe, such as France, and from America, such as Samantha Power, are involved, you see. These are all swindlers who make a man of conscience out of crooks like Vardanian. This man laundered money in Donbass, he is directly to blame for the massacre in Donbass, and now he is in a Baku prison, you know. And Samantha Power comes to us in Kyiv and justifies him, and here and there, and they even want to nominate him for the Nobel Peace Prize. Can you imagine how much hypocrisy and falsehood is being created today on the blood of people, in Karabakh and in Ukraine? That is, we see it, and you also saw it with your own eyes, in huge quantities. You just need to understand this. This is a very important topic. Thank you again for the opportunity to talk about this topic. Take care of yourself. Thank you. See you. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to the heroes. Of course, I ask our viewers not to forget to like and comment. You see, we put comments in our broadcasts, we remember about them. And, of course, share our conversations. My name is Ihor Havryshchak. Traditionally, we will see you on the air of Channel 24.